How you doing? How you doing?
Hey, what's up guys? LegalBro here, breaking down Jennifer Shah's sentencing and talking about what the US government asked for and what Jennifer Shah actually received, including snippets from my favorite sections and not in a good way. Let's talk about all of the consumers that Jennifer Shah scammed. Remember, the US government had to wait until the 11th hour for Jennifer Shah to plead guilty. And the US government said that Jennifer Shah is the most culpable person in this scheme. What Jennifer Shah did is she had all of these companies that would buy leads and basically pump garbage to elderly people over 55. And Jennifer Shah's companies manipulated the elderly and abused them by not only selling them garbage, but also knowing that what they were being sold was never going to amount to anything. Most of the time, the people that Jennifer Shah's company scammed were people that would inquire about something and then they would just get passed around from group to group until they maxed out their credit cards. There were even some stories about Jennifer Shah's cronies selling online resources to people that didn't know how to work a computer. Here's a direct quote from the government's sentencing motion. The defendant and their co-conspirators knew that the victims, many of whom were elderly, sometimes lacked the basic ability to use a computer and often had limited financial resources, but were typically sold as many different products and services as possible before the credit limits on their credit cards were reached. Real nice, Jenny. And the government goes on to say that Jennifer Shah did other things to conceal her identity from the FTC. At the defendant's direction, the bank accounts for the entities, right, the entities that Shah owns, were placed in the name of third parties to conceal the defendant's control of them. Now, this scheme didn't just happen overnight and hurt a couple people. This was going on for years. Take a look at this quote from the government. Beginning in 2017, the defendant not only controlled the flow of leads from Red Steel through coaching and tax floors on her own marketing upsell floor, she also directly supervised the salespeople at MPG who spent all day, every day lying to victims and telling them that they could earn money through their internet business if they purchased products and services of little or no value. Jen Shah is running a telemarketing scheme. What does that mean? She's going to be in the crosshairs of a couple different agencies. The FTC, they govern all communication, right? FTC is going to be in charge of what you can say and where you can say it and to whom and how, right? Think of the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. You can't make calls to a cell phone using an automated telephone dialing system or pre-recorded voice without the called party's consent or written consent. Well, in these cases, this exact scam, because it's unfair and deceptive, is going to be in the FTC crosshairs because of the fact that it's a telemarketing company. The other thing that will garner attention is Shah's company is going to generate a ton of consumer complaints. So remember, the state attorney general, so in each state, you have a different attorney general. Their job is to protect their citizens. So in this case, if a state like, say, Florida learns that they have a number of their citizens, we have a lot of elderly people in the state of Florida, getting scammed by Shah's company, well, the Florida Attorney General's office is going to start looking into them, right? What Shah is doing is she knows that if certain types of complaints come through, they have to pay them off to keep quiet. Otherwise, they're going to generate enough complaints. And what's Jen Shah doing this same time period? She may pretend like she's remorseful now, but she certainly didn't seem like it at the time. Here's what the government said. The defendant often joked about victims suffering and her employees' ability to victimize them. For example, in October 17, the defendant texted some of her employees about a victim who was attempting to obtain a refund after the victim realized she had been defrauded. Do we need to refund this lady, or is she done crying and ready to move forward? Reyes, are you losing your touch with the ladies? Yeah, Jen Shah, you're a predator. You're disgusting. Government goes on further. December 17, the defendant explained that she wanted to move parts of her scheme abroad and use the names of nominees in Kosovo and Cyprus. Obviously, the corporate registrations in those areas are going to be much less scrutinized than, say, here in the United States. Why would you do that? Minimize the risk, and then they can run this scheme for a long time. This obviously is twofold. What do we have here? We have Jen Shah defrauding and scamming consumers and then actively trying to conceal it. And then, oh, by the way, when they get the knock, 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 FBI, open up! On the door, and they've got the feds coming in and they've got scrutiny, what is she doing? Instead of just stopping, let's double down. Let's move this overseas. I can't even imagine what must have been going through her mind. The only thing that must have been going through her mind is greed, greed, greed. Because obviously, if she doesn't have the scrutiny of the US and can funnel money offshore, she can continue ripping people off until the end of time. Here's a Jennifer Shah quote directly. Look, I'm doing you a favor. You aren't on the lease and you don't pay rent. Therefore, you don't live here. If someone is doing you a favor, you bring my name into a criminal federal prosecution case. My home is my place of refuge. They could come in with a warrant now at any time if they wanted to. Plus, Mercedes has all of my last 3 years of everything next to my DNA results when I had to apply to live here. The interesting part about this is that Jen Shah says, direct quote, my home is my place of refuge. Yet what does she do? She calls all of these elderly people at their home, exploits them, exploits their businesses, racks up their credit cards, and runs away like a thief in the night. It's almost worse than breaking into someone's home. Why? If those elderly people had someone break into their home, well, they're not going to be able to charge up their credit card. They're going to call in and say, operator, yep, credit card's been stolen. Instead, what does Jen Shah do? She sells something that is complete garbage, utter dog shit. And then these poor consumers, what do they have? They're stuck with these credit card bills, and she gets to live the life of luxury. Do not feel bad for Jen Shah one bit. I actually represent consumers. I don't represent people like Jen Shah, and I sue people like Jen Shah for doing this type of stuff to consumers. It's absolutely terrible, and it makes my blood boil. Here's another example of Jen Shah's greed. Take a look. The government says one of the defendant's employees explained, we have been calling him every day with no answer. He is really sick and 85 years old. In response, the defendant provided instructions about what company to process his payments, questioned why they had charged back his credit card for 3 smaller amounts, and instead of one large amount, reminded that another entity that the defendant controlled doesn't have a transaction limit. Absolutely disgusting. Jen Shah is like a wannabe Wolf of Wall Street. Like, they're both scummy, but like one of them does it on a really low level and one of them does it on like a really... But this, folks, is the cherry on top of the scumbag Sunday. Jen Shah, November 2020, describing her business. I own 3 different marketing companies and we do lead generation, data monetization, customer acquisition. The best way to describe it, I'm the Wizard of Oz. I'm the one behind the curtain. No one knows exists, but I'm the one making everything happen. I'm sure that would have been in the government's opening statement. That has to be one of the most gold quotes that you will ever find about somebody talking about their wrongdoing and how they avoid the scrutiny. So just to recap, what do we have? Jen Shah, restitution over $6 million, forfeiture over $6 million. Government requested 10 years. She ends up getting 6.5. I think that's complete hogwash. The only reason she got 6.5, my opinion, is because obviously she pled guilty. And my opinion, again, she gave a apology to all the victims. She said she's going to pay him back every dime. What do we know? We got the shovel. We got to put the shovel down. First rule when you're in a hole, stop digging. What's Jen Shah convicted of? Conspiracy to commit wire fraud, conspiracy to commit money laundering. If you want to hear my thoughts on who committed the worst crime between the Chrisleys and Jennifer Shah, take a look at the video up here. I'm going to do a quick review. If you have any other celebrity legal videos or topics, I want you to subscribe below, leave a comment, leave a like. Let me know what videos you want to see.